This item's on for information with a presentation this evening. It was requested to be added to the agenda by Ms. Lori Williams, along with some of the other board members. Ms. Wall and Ms. Jackson and Ms. Zargapur and pretty much everybody. Ms. Williams, let's turn it over to Dr. McDade. Dr. McDade.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I would now like to introduce Peter Newsom, our Chief of Police, Mr. Vern Bach, Chief Operating Officer, and Mr. Ron Crowe, our Director of Risk Management and Security Services. And collaboratively, they will be providing our presentation on safety and security in the school division.
Good evening, Chair Lateef, members of the school board, Dr. McDade. Thank you very much for having me here. I will start by saying that I do have a little bit of insight into the work that you do at the school board. I have a sister who's an elected school board member down in Florida, and I have the insight because she constantly tells me about how difficult it can be to do the work that you all do. I can tell you as a resident of Prince William County, that work is very much appreciated because I know you're working on behalf of our public school students. And so thank you for doing that. Dr. McDade, we have quickly developed a very good, strong professional relationship by necessity. My personal opinions of her, other than the fact that she's hardworking and committed to this work, is that she really cares. That has been my impression of her, and I think Prince William County is very, very lucky to have her. I'm going to talk about, and I have a presentation here, about 5 topics, but we can open it up for Q&A at the end to talk about anything or answer any questions that you might have. And really what I'm going to talk about is how the work we do at the Prince William County Police Department dovetails with the work that risk management does to ensure that our schools are safe, our school communities are safe here in Prince William County. We're going to talk quickly about the memorandum of agreement that was recently signed between the police department and the schools. I'll give you a little bit of the 22-23 school year statistics, talk about our current deployment of our school resource officers, handling threats at our schools, how we do that on the law enforcement side. And then I want to talk at the end about, and I think this is probably extremely important on a lot of folks' minds, is our training and responding to God forbid we have an active violence situation here at one of our schools. So the memorandum of understanding, I came from a philosophy with regards to our school resource officers that we do not want to unnecessarily introduce children into the criminal justice system. When I came here to Prince William County, I did not see that memorialized in an agreement between the police department and the schools. I discussed this topic with the superintendent, and very quickly we were able to get this memorandum of understanding in order. More importantly, when I initially came here to Prince William County, I had to meet obviously with our school resource officers and get some sense as to what was going on and their philosophy and their approach towards the schools. There had been some criticism, and you know that because you were here in Prince William County, about disorderly conduct arrests, particularly at our schools, and the fact that the Prince William County Police Department was at a very high rate introducing young people into our criminal justice system. And I wanted to ensure that that philosophy changed. Kids should not be, first, in my opinion, if a child has already shown up for school, a student has shown up for school, they've already done something good. And we don't want to take them out of that environment in handcuffs unless it's absolutely necessary. That's my philosophy on it. We were able to memorialize that thought into a memorandum of understanding, and I think that's critical to have that philosophy in our school system here in Prince William County. Here's a little bit of the school data, and this is actually pretty impressive if you look at the number of arrests that we have had in our schools. to only have 5 arrests, 3 of them involving juveniles or people under the age of 18, and 2 of them involving adults. For the size of the school system we have, that is a very, very low number. The things, though, that are a little bit more concerning, if you look at the number of threats that we've had at our schools, 46, that's a significant number. And the threats, I got to tell you, and I don't have, well, actually, I don't have to tell you, very disruptive for children to have those threats, can be traumatic to kids to have to experience those threats or to see those threats. And I think we have to take the threats very, very seriously, and we do. And I'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. You look at the weapon recoveries. We've had 5 guns recovered from our schools so far this school year. That is 5 too many. We've also had other weapons recovered from the schools. And if you want to have some comparison to last year for the entire school year, we had a total of 14 arrests. 4 of those were adults and 10 were juveniles. We had 124 reported threats at our schools. And we had 24 weapon recoveries, and 9 of those weapons were guns. So I know that's very concerning for everyone to hear. I am a firm believer, and I know there are people who disagree with me, and I have said this since I've came to Prince William County in the School Resource Officer Program. I believe that the School Resource Officer Program is valuable in a lot of respects, but in particular, everyone always points to the security that the police officers can provide, particularly at our high schools, and I agree with that. More importantly, I look at our school resource officers as a way that the police department can build positive relationships with our young people. And that's one of the things that is missing with some of our young people today, because some of the things that have happened in policing have turned our young people off to policing. The people who do this job at the Prince William County Police Department spend their entire day bending over backwards to develop those positive relationships. And in my opinion, they're being very effective at doing it. And I will continue to say that. And the reason that I say that, because when I first came to Prince William County, there were some community leaders here, and there certainly were community leaders in other jurisdictions and some elected officials who decided that having school resource officers in the schools was detrimental to our children. I have to fundamentally disagree with that, and I understand the reasoning behind it, and the reasoning behind it is that you could have a classroom to prison pipeline, and that's a valid concern. But I think there's some things that have happened here in the Commonwealth and here in Prince William County to prevent that from occurring. And so I would hate to see us lose that relationship building over that concern when I don't believe it exists right now here in the county. The thing that I point to with regards to the state is, as you all know, the state has actually you cannot arrest young people for disorderly conduct on school property, school buses, at school events. That's been eliminated. So that concern that we had in Prince William County no longer exists. I think this memorandum of understanding that I talked about earlier memorializes our approach to arresting young people in our schools. So I'll continue to say that, and we can look to just a little bit further north of here. We can look at the experience in Alexandria, Virginia. There were elected leaders that legislated that they didn't want to have school resource officers in the school. Shortly thereafter, there was a major incident at one of the schools, and next thing you know, the elected leaders had to reverse that decision. So there's a lot of value, in my opinion, in having our school resource officers if the program is run appropriately. With regards to deployment, we have a school resource officer assigned to each of our 13 high schools. We have 2 at Independence School, and we have 3 that are assigned to our middle schools. 3 of our middle schools, Fred Lynn, Parkside, and Ripon Middle School, all have a school resource officer that's designated to the schools. With the remaining 18 schools, we have 6 school resource officers. Each of those 6 officers has 3 of those schools, and they're supposed to stop at each of those schools during the course of the day. They're supposed to develop relationships with the principals and to ensure that those places are safe. The other tool that we have in our toolbox to ensure that our schools are safe, if we receive specific information that there could potentially be something going on at one of our schools, we have everybody in our patrol division, and we can give special attention to our schools. So our total number of SROs right now is 24. I believe that's a couple more than we had last year. You probably already know this as well. Like many other professions, the policing profession is struggling right now, and our staffing is low. That right now is probably the most officers that I can dedicate to this program. As we increase our staffing, which I know we will, that will probably increase. What I would like to see, and I think the superintendent agrees with me on this, is to have a school resource officer assigned to all of our high schools and to all of our middle schools. The key to the relationship, to the school resource officer program is really the relationship between the officer and the administration at the individual schools. I have not heard concerns from either side, from the superintendent or from our school resource officers, that those relationships are not working in a positive way, so I feel very good right now about our school resource officer program. Talking about the threats at the school, we have a very comprehensive threat assessment program where we collaborate with the Prince William County Schools Risk Management, the administration, and the families of the involved children. We receive threats from multiple sources. We can get them, people contacting the police. We get it from Prince William County staff and students, and the Say Something tip line, which all of you are familiar with. Virginia State Code requires that public school employees report threats to law enforcement, which is good because we need to know about it so they can be addressed, they can be assessed. And I can tell you, of the 126 threats that we received last year and the 46 that we received this year, in the large majority of those cases, we're able to determine exactly where the threat came from. And in the majority of those cases, those threats come from students that are attending the schools. And what we do in those cases is we will speak with the student, obviously with a parent present. In the majority of those cases, the parents are very cooperative. Oftentimes, the parents will give us, if a weapon was mentioned during the course of the threat, parents will give us consent to search the student's room. And what we find out oftentimes is it was a young person doing something that young people do, not thinking and acting. Oftentimes it's something, and it's not something where a child should be charged. I say that, but I also caution that because these threats can be so disruptive, one of the things that I would recommend is that the legislature make the charge of conducting a threat at a school as a felony. Currently, it is a misdemeanor, and the reason I say that is because we are really restricted in our ability to investigate threats that occur outside of the Commonwealth of Virginia, because we can only enforce the misdemeanors within the Commonwealth. So we had a threat, and I remember it from last year, that originated out of New Jersey. And if we were able to get a warrant in that case, a misdemeanor warrant, we wouldn't be able to extradite that person back here to be held accountable for it. I know earlier today, and some of you may know this as well, in Maine, they had multiple calls for active shooters occurring in the state of Maine, all over the state of Maine. Very disruptive, very scary to our kids. And I think when people are involved in that behavior, to ensure that it doesn't happen again, we need to have some pretty significant repercussions. And law enforcement needs to have the ability to cross state lines in those cases to hold folks accountable. The active violence training and our response, I'll talk about this as quickly as I can to get through it. I have been very impressed with the level of training that our police officers receive here in Prince William County with regards to responding to active shooting. We have what's called tactical emergency care training, and what that is for our officers in the event They come into an active violence situation where people are being injured, a mass casualty event, that they have the ability to stop people who are significantly injured. They actually practice this in our community on a pretty regular basis where they save lives. The high threat response training is in collaboration with fire and rescue, and what that is in the event of an active shooter situation, an active violence situation, that the police and the fire department can go in there together and get people to safety, get people to emergency rooms. Our SWAT team, we have a SWAT team that conducts regular training throughout the year. The little box on the right there, which talks about our active shooter response, that is a philosophy that is good for everybody in every situation. And I don't know if you've heard of it before. You probably have. It's the run, hide, or fight. And that applies just to about any situation where it could happen, anywhere in the community. Certainly it applies in our schools. Our community engagement team gives that presentation. If you haven't had it, I would recommend that you do. There's some examples of recent trainings that we gave. The one at the annual conference that the school has was very well attended, from what I understand. The officers who gave the presentation said that the administration people who were in the class were actively involved in participating in the training. So I think that was extremely helpful. Now, this is the part of the presentation I think that scares us the most. And when I talk about this, I will refer to the one I think that's most recent in our memories, and that's the shooting that we had in Uvalde, Texas, where 19 children were killed and 2 teachers were killed. And I think that anybody who's taken a look at that can say that that was an abject failure on the part of a lot of people. The school administration has some blame in that they did not properly secure the facility. The person that was involved in that event was an evil person, and they went in there with a desire to harm children. And that sometime is unavoidable. But if doors were locked and they had proper security protocols at that particular school, some children may still be alive today. And then when you talk about the law enforcement response, I think that, again, abject failure. You had 77 minutes, I think it was, that children were waiting inside when this person, in some instances, was still shooting. You had some children in there that were injured and they didn't get proper medical care. I can tell you I am very confident that that would not happen. God forbid we had an incident like that here in Prince William County. The training that our officers receive, first of all, we are always in preparation mode. When incidents like that happen in Uvalde, Texas, we take a very close look at it, to any lessons that are learned from that, to improve our training, to improve our potential response. We not only train our recruits in active violence scenarios, but we do ongoing training with all of our police officers. We are very fortunate in Prince William County to have our own police academy, so we can adjust training very quickly for these types of things. We have what is called scenario-based training, and we run all of our police officers through a number of different scenarios. And it's been my experience in my policing career that the best way to be able to approach these incidents, not only with your law enforcement personnel, but anybody, students, staff, anybody that's involved in these situations, you have to be thinking about it before it happens. And I know this is not a topic that we want to think about, but unfortunately in society today, this can happen. And we saw it happen in Uvalde, Texas, and that's not the only police shooting, that's not the only school shooting that we have seen. Just like was mentioned earlier, just this past Sunday, we had 3 young people that were killed at a school down at UVA. So this happens, this is real. What I tell people all the time as the chief of police, doing policing for 32 years, don't ever underestimate the evil of man. And that is not a jaded approach. That's an unfortunate reality of the world we live in. So you have to think about these things before they're happening. And those are the things that we tell our police officers. The approach to these situations changed dramatically after the Columbine incident. That was in 1999. I was a police captain at the time, and what happened at Columbine, and this is the way that police were trained to approach active violence situations, was you wait, you contain, and you wait till your special teams arrive on the scene. That was the approach. That changed in 1999, and it actually has evolved since then. The approach then, since then, is that you get, when something like this has happened, it's an active situation, quickly get officers to the scene, you establish incident command. That was one of the major criticisms that we had in Uvalde, is they did not establish incident command. Some of you may be saying, well, what's the chief talking about? What is incident command? What that means is the first police officer that arrives on the scene is in command. And they are in command until somebody of a higher rank comes and relieves them. They are in command. That's the first rule. The second rule is that if there's an active violence situation and one of our police officers arrive, they don't wait for help. We are trained, we have equipment, we have vests. You go in there and you stop the threat. And that's the way that our officers are trained here in Prince William County. Some of these other things are going to happen. A lot of these things are going to be happening during the same time. You safely evacuate or shelter in place, and people will ask, well, which one do we do? It depends on the circumstances. I can't tell you right now in every single situation what you do, but you go back to that mentality of run, hide, or fight. You run if you can safely, you hide if you can safely, and your last resort, if neither of those options are available, is that you fight. And you fight in the hardest and the most extreme way that you can. Medical care, we have to coordinate medical care with fire and rescue. We have to establish reunification, because something happens at any large event, particularly at our schools. Guess what's going to happen? All of the parents associated with that school will come in. We have to set up a reunification point, and notifying the public. That's one of the things that we have to do. We have to let people know something's going on. These things will all be happening at the same time. Our police department is very well equipped. We have breaching tools. You heard a lot when you talk about the Uvalde situation, you heard a lot about police officers trying to get through doors and having difficulty and not having keys and those kinds of things. That is not a concern here in Prince William County. We have breaching tools. If we need to get through a door or a window, we're going through that door or their window. We're going to get in there and we're going to stop the threat. We have great partnerships with we have the FBI located right here in Prince William County. We have great relationships with our federal partners that brings additional resources if we need them. Great relationship with our Virginia State Police if we need them. Our response times are going to be very quick in the event, God forbid, like I said, if something like this happens. And the other thing, and this is another one of the grim realities, is that the reason that I'm confident with the way that the police department will respond if something like this were to happen is that we have shooting incidents like this that have happened. You guys all remember that we had a shooting on a Sunday at Benton Elementary School. I'm sorry, that was a Benton Middle School during a flag football game. A lot of people were out there. Prince William County Police responded to that incident. They were quickly able to get medical care to the two people that were shot. Both of those people survived. They were able to get to coordinate reunification with the families and the children. And then the good news is that the person that was responsible for that was eventually arrested and held accountable. The other incident is last year, in August of '21, we had a shooting during a football game at Freedom High School. For those of you who are familiar with that situation, it was during a driving rainstorm. And we had that same situation. Whenever you have gunshots at an event like that, there's panic. People panic. And that's natural. It's normal. Police were able to respond. They were able to get medical attention to the person that was involved. They were able to establish a reunification center, and they were able to get that scene resolved pretty quickly. The person that was responsible for that shooting was also arrested and held accountable. That's why I'm confident. I can't tell you I don't lose sleep thinking about these things, because I do. But that's why I'm confident that you have a police department here in Prince William County that has the ability to effectively respond if something like this happens. That is the end of my presentation. I don't know if we want to ask Ron to come up and give his, and then we can collect it, or if you'd like to make comments or ask questions now.
And Chief, thank you so much for that presentation. Let's have Ron do his presentation, then
All right.
the questions may be better with context from both.
Thank you, Chief Newsom, and I want to thank Chief personally for his continued support of our schools and for the strong relationship that we enjoy with the Prince William County Police Department and our relationship with our school resource officers in the district. Before I start tonight, too, I want to extend just my heartfelt condolences to the UVA and Charlottesville community. That's a community I lived in for 17 years, and my thoughts and prayers go out to that community. But that also highlights the importance for us of safety and security within our schools. So through our close relationship and partnership with Prince William County, Department of Fire and Rescue, and the Office of Emergency Management, we collectively take steps every day to make our schools safer and reduce the probability of an incident that could harm students, staff, or visitors. Prince William County Schools implements required safety training in schools every year, and it is only through practicing lockdowns, defend options like run, hide, fight, fire drills, weather drills, shelter-in-place procedures, and other scenarios that students and staff can be prepared for an emergency. Additionally, the school system has established a safety committee that meets regularly to discuss safety in our schools, and I personally want to extend my gratitude to members of that committee. Through that ongoing dialogue and focus on school safety, we're continually evaluating our safety procedures across every level throughout each school year. Tonight, you'll receive a high-level update on security and safety initiatives and programs in our schools that are occurring across the division. I want to emphasize that this is a high-level update, and there are many safety protocols and procedures that we will not share tonight, as we keep them close to the vest and they're not for public consumption. We keep these items close to the vest to keep our students, faculty, and staff safe. Finally, it's important to recognize that everyone plays a critical role in school safety. Students, staff, and the community are encouraged to be observant and let an adult know if they see or hear something that makes them feel uncomfortable, nervous, or frightened, and especially if they hear threats or dangerous behavior. If you have any doubt, contact law enforcement immediately. At this time, I want to turn the rest of the presentation over to Mr. Ron Crowe, our Director of Risk Management and Safety and Security. Ron.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Lateef, Dr. McDade, and school board members. I appreciate the opportunity tonight to share this information with you. I do want to thank Chief Newsom for being here this evening. We have a decades-long partnership with the Prince William County Police Department, and specifically the SRO unit. That unit works with our schools and my department literally around the clock on school safety issues, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate their partnership in that. So we want to talk about things that we're doing in safety and security, and I think we want to couch that with what's in our strategic plan. So our safety and security initiatives live under commitment number 2 of positive climate and culture. We want to have Prince William County facilities be welcoming, safe, and sustainable, with 90% of our students and staff reporting feeling safe at school. Right now, our middle and high school students, that number hovers around 80%, and we have area for improvement there. I'm confident that we have a plan in place to be able to move those numbers significantly and impact student achievement. So what are our initiatives and investments? Our initiatives, which I'll talk about individually, are implementing the Say Something and Honest reporting system, annual school safety assessments, updating some of our systems to more current technologies, providing for a consistent, visible, and well-trained security staff, and increasing crisis management readiness division-wide. Some of our investments we've made just this year are the addition of 3 senior school security officers, a security systems specialist, an operational systems specialist, an additional elementary school safety officer, an additional day shift security patrol officer, and 97 security assistance. We provided support to every level of schools, and for those of y'all counting at home, that is 104 FTEs dedicated to school safety and security just this year. Our Say Something initiative was launched in December of 2021 and has been fully implemented. We've trained more than 40,000 secondary school students, more than 1,300 staff have been trained. In October, there's an annual refresher video and training provided to these students so we can keep the Say Something initiative on the forefront. And just to give you an update of where we're at, since December 6th till the end of October, we've managed and responded to 447 tips. At the top of that list are concerns with students' mental health. I can tell you that it's nice to be able to say that we've had students in need and we've been able to provide assistance to them. Other things that come in behind that are threats to schools regarding typically social media issues. And all of those receive 24/7, 365-day support. We're conducting annual school safety assessments. The state requires that you do them every 3 years. We're doing them every year to try to identify areas of improvement across our school division, and we review those findings with the Safe School Advisory Council so they can provide input for us on that and provide some guidance and focus our efforts. Improving our technologies in the school division, we are updating all of our schools to more current CCTV platforms called Verkada. That's a $6.8 million investment. That's a significant investment in upgrading all of our school security systems for cameras. We have hired a security systems specialist to manage that process. Recently, you approved in the last school board meeting an addition of 2 vendors to make 3 vendors that can provide installations at our schools, so we're going to kick this thing into overdrive. But prior to that, we've currently completed installations at 23 schools. We have 10 schools that have partial implementation, 5 underway, and 12 purchase orders out for approval with cameras ordered. So we're moving forward pretty quickly. We also have requested funding through the annual Safe Schools state security grant for additional funding at a high school. We want to provide for a consistent, visible, and well-trained security staff. For this year and starting this year, we provided security uniforms to all of our school security officers. We want them to be visible and recognized by our staff, students, and community when they show up, and also our law enforcement partners if they have to respond. That includes shirts. We've got winter jackets for them that are all branded with PWCS security, as well as hats and stocking hats. We want them to be highly visible. In addition to that, we want our staff to be visible. So whenever they're outside, they're wearing high visibility vests and they're carrying radios. I was at 2 elementary schools recently, one during dismissal, and when it pulled up, I saw a half a dozen staff outside wearing vests. You knew exactly where they were and that people were outside and paying attention. So I think that's vitally important. Let's talk about professional development a minute for our school security officers. The state requires that we do 8 hours of training annually to complete and update their school security officer training. Our school division is fortunate enough to provide 36 hours of training annually to our school security officer staff. To provide for more coherent safety and security processes at all of our schools, we have security information in our regulations, we have in our crisis management plan and our security guidelines. It became apparent that we needed to condense that information so it was more easily used by the end users. So we came back with a document, a one-page document called Back to Basics that we launched back in the spring and re-emphasized at the beginning of school. And on that document is 20 things that every school should have in place every time we walk up to a school. So we go up, we look, and we see, hey, here's your 20 things. That's our security posture. That's where we want to live every single day at every single school. We expanded that with our Prince William County Schools Guide to Best Practices in School Safety and Security, and added to that one-page document additional information that's easy to find and easy to understand with the links to other information for schools. So if you look between those 2 documents, it's readily apparent and clear what our security posture and training is for our entire school division. We want to increase our division-wide crisis management readiness. As we spoke a little bit earlier, there are 15 required crisis drills each year. Last year, we purchased the Raptor Crisis Drill Manager module. We're able to track all school crisis drills every year, so at any given time, we can look and help focus schools and help remind them of drills that need to be completed on a regular basis. They can go and plan drills ahead of time. So that's a good tool for us to use to make sure we're completing all of our drills as required by the Code of Virginia. My staff reviews all crisis plans during the summer. That's also a state code requirement, so every page they turn in that's required to turn in, we review every single one of those to make sure they're up to date and current. We are completing, starting last year, after-action assessments for significant security events in schools. The goal of that is to look at things and help schools understand and celebrate the things that went well and things they did well, as well as areas that we could look for improvement moving forward. And that includes central office staff, my staff, our law enforcement partners, and any of the school staff that were involved in that process and decision-making process. We share that with other schools to make sure everyone's learning, and we're in a process of continuous improvement. We provide to the cabinet on a monthly basis data-driven reports on school security and safety and what our posture is. It became apparent that we need to start treating school safety like we do instruction. We have measured goals, and we have to have defined data to determine where we're at and measure that so we can, again, celebrate the things that are going well and look to improve things that need improvement. Also in our strategic plan, by 2025, we'll have annual crisis training and evaluation of all schools, so we're looking at how we're going to support that and move forward and grow our training staff so we can be out at schools on a more regular basis. I do want to talk about our senior school security officers for a minute because they fulfill a role that has been badly needed in the school division. So we added 3 positions. They all support our high and middle schools. They provide evaluative data on our school security posture every time they walk on site. So they're working with schools on that back to basics when they're on site and providing feedback and training to schools, security staff, and administration on where we're at. They assist with crisis response on school site. And they also will be working with schools when we receive after-hours threats to make sure that we have a proper response, communication is in place, and the morning after that we have support at the schools for those events. And one of the other things we heard loud and clear from our high and middle school administrators is, when we don't have our lead school security person here, we need support for that. We need to fill that leadership void at the school because it's vitally important. So these 3 positions, when we have a lead school security officer out at the school, we'll fill that position until a new officer comes in. Then they'll train that person on best practices and our guide and back to basics to make sure we're coherent across our school division at those schools. And they'll also mentor our new school security officers. So, I think that goes a long way to make sure that we're all doing the same thing and we have a well-trained staff at our schools. And, and just to make mention of our elementary school community safety officers, a couple of them are here with us tonight. They'll be providing those same services at our elementary schools. So what are some of our school security initiatives? We have senior school security officers, community safety officers, security patrol officers, and security residents supporting our school security posture. They're out every day walking rounds around schools, around the outside, because most importantly, we want to make sure our schools are secure from the outside in. Through October, they've done more than 900 exterior rounds of schools during the school day, and our security residents and security patrol staff have done thousands of rounds of our exterior, of the school exteriors during after hours and overnight shifts. So we're out there constantly supporting our school security posture. We've standardized our security protocols for varsity school football games as well as other after-school events. I think if you've been to a football game, you'll see a very visible presence where we're stationed at areas in the school. We always have a police officer in the parking lot with lights on riding around during the game. So it's very evident that we have a security posture in place at our schools. We have pre-shift meetings. We have radio communications for all of our school and administrative staff with the police department, and communication with the other schools that are traveling to games to make sure we're all on the same page. We've trained all of our security staff on the use of Narcan. We will continue that with our new security FTEs added this year and do annual trainings to make sure all of our security staff are trained in that and have that Narcan available that they carry themselves. And then, as far as signage, we posted weapons and gun-free school zone signs that also have the legal and code of conduct consequences. We are also reviewing, what the total signage package is for schools so we can have that be consistent across the school division. Last year, we provided the schools high visibility lanyards. You've seen those. They're conference-based lanyards, so they're always forward-facing. They have the visitor badge in them. It's clear who your visitors are at schools. We have provided for QR code security round systems. So essentially, every time our security staff, whether they be school staff, security residents, or our security patrol staff does rounds of schools, we're capturing that data. So what gets measured gets done. So on a regular basis, we can show you exactly what our security efforts are at schools. We implemented that over the summer with our patrol and residents and with our school security officers in October. Again, I talked about our crisis drill reporting module. That's another way that we've upgraded our technology. And we were recently awarded a state digital school mapping grant to have a company come in and go to every single one of our schools and provide extremely detailed maps that will be used by law enforcement on emergency response as needed. So there's a lot of information on those maps. We can also use them in our school division for certain things, but we're looking forward to getting that done. For FY 24 to 26, we're going to be replacing all of our 800 megahertz radios. So those radios are used by all of our school buses, security patrol staff, and my office. All schools have an 800 megahertz radio that they can make direct contact with the public safety 911 call center, and every so often we have to upgrade that technology. Every year you hear Mr. Wallingford talk about putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into a sinking fund for this. So we have money in our budget that we've been working on for about 10 years to fund this project. So we'll be working on that over the next couple years. But ultimately, I just want to talk about a few things on what we're doing to keep schools safe. Clearly, we need to keep all of our interior and exterior doors locked. Exterior doors all time and interior doors whenever we're involved in student instruction. We don't have time when there's an event to get into a secure posture. We need to already be in a secure posture. We've had this requirement for numbers of years. We're out with our staff making sure that we're being coherent and training our staff and school security staff to look for these and make sure we are in a secure posture at all times. All schools have controlled access. So we have the access control system where we can evaluate people before they come into the building, and that's called the A-phone system. We do training on how to talk and question to people while they're outside before they come into the building. All schools have crisis plans that we talked about, and all schools have to watch our crisis management terminology and response video annually. That's a state code requirement that we review crisis procedures with all staff and students every year at the beginning of school. So we also do that. As far as continuous improvement, we're always seeking that. We're currently reviewing our central office crisis response protocols to increase our support to schools during crisis. We're looking at our incident command structure and communication protocols. Our crisis intervention teams are always there to help with mental health support to schools after crisis. We're looking at implementing a division-wide reunification support team. So if we do have to move a number of students from one school to another, we have a trained staff team that we can go out and assist schools with that. We want to provide more supports to schools during crisis. We are reviewing our crisis management plan to make it more easily consumed by our end users. So while a lot of the content will remain the same, how we present it we think will be easier for staff and students to understand and consume. So we're looking at that. And of course, as usual, we always attend national level training, so we can always, be aware of what the newest things are out there and keep our staffing or response actions up to date. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crowe. Thank you, Mr. Bach, Chief Newsom. We really appreciate it. Questions? We'll start with Ms. Williams and then Mr. Wilk.
Thank you, Chairman Lateef. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming and presenting information this evening. For me, I asked for this to be on the agenda because I started thinking about school safety and security, specifically from a parent perspective last year after the incident in my end of town, and how the information was disseminated, and then the changes that ensued for the good for our school division. And then as a board member, specifically, I started thinking, how do we present this information to our school families? Because we do spend a considerable amount of time throughout our school year, every year, updating our students, our staff, and our families of those students and staff on what it is that we do to ensure a safe school environment. But I think, or I know for me it was, how do we consolidate that information? Because the public outcry was, what about this? What about this? What about this? Every time we have an incident. And it got me to really thinking, we do this all the time, but we don't do it in a manner that's concise. And we don't do it often enough in a manner that's concise for the good of our whole community, right? When we start our school year, we go over the code of behavior. Love that we've updated it. It's so much easier to understand and comprehend throughout the school year. Thank you, Ms. Hubner. Throughout the school year, we address these topics, but we don't just have one opportunity to share multiple sides of this story for our school community to understand and digest. So I want to say thank you first off, because I understand and know the amount of work that it takes to consolidate this information, the amount of schedule coordination it takes to get Chief Newsom here, everything involved in this presentation. So I really do, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate all of you coming tonight and for all the hard work that went into having both of these presentations made available for our public. I think that's something our public also doesn't understand is you can have an idea in July. It may not manifest here in this room sometime for several months because of the amount of moving pieces. I'm going to start with Chief Newsom, since you started with the opening us up this evening. I very much appreciate you attending. I have the opportunity, unlike some of my other board members, to work with you monthly on the Racial and Social Justice Commission. I bring that up because I admire all of your hard work and effort. I think that the Racial and Social Justice Commission was a very important tool used to bring more public attention to the Memorandum of Understanding and what that exactly means to our community. I appreciate that we were able to look at it from an administrative and operational side at the school division, but also to be able to provide the public the same sort of opportunity to delve into that and what it means to our schools and how our schools work collaboratively with the police department. I want to thank you as a long-serving school board member, because I think I was maybe, Mr. Crowe, you could probably attest to this, one of the primary school board members that hounded every year that we looked at it, and our former administration, and of course you, Mr. Crowe, about what's in there and how are we going to change it, and what does this mean? How do we take it from a document and implement it? And I think that starting with that foundation, building on it with our new administration and our new chief of police and his administration, I think we have something that I feel comfortable in from my lens is a quality document that really ensures collaboration and the ability to work for the good of our entire school division and the community at large from both sides. I noticed that in your presentation you changed it to a memorandum of agreement, which I thought was great because it's more than just an understanding. And I think it's important, if you have not had a chance for our public to read that agreement, I highly encourage you to do so. I you talked a lot about, Chief Newsom, about the ratio of SROs in our schools. And I just want to thank you for also bringing up the fact that along with school divisions, the police are also having employment staffing issues, and that does affect us. One of the things that's not included in your presentation, but I don't want to leave out, is that the police department is also responsible for crossing guards,
We
if I'm
are.
not mistaken.
Yeah.
They're also an important tool and are ensuring the safety and security of our students. And I think I bring that up because a lot of our public doesn't understand that crossing guards fall under your auspices and not ours.
If you don't mind me commenting real quickly on that.
Sure.
We have a very committed, a really remarkably committed group of folks who go out and ensure that our children get to and from school on a daily basis. And they're a great group of folks, and they are part of our security plan. So thank you for raising that.
Absolutely. I bring it up because I know that my school board member who sat here before me ended up retiring and becoming a school crossing guard officer. So that was a fun fact about the Woodbridge District. I know that you spoke about response time in the past. We had Chief Bernard here who spoke about how, depending on what school you're at, correct, it's usually very quick. I don't want to get down to the nitty-gritty minutes because, of course, our community has changed since then, and I appreciate that. One of the things I'd like for you to address, but at a high level, is how we work together during an emergency. I bring this up because earlier this year there was an incident at my high school, and there was, I think, a lot of misunderstanding from the public and some of our own staff and students on how it is that you work collaboratively with our school security teams, meaning there is a protocol that the police department has to follow, and then there's also a set of protocols that our school division follows as well. And I don't need the specifics, right, because we don't want to jeopardize anybody's safety. But I know that there, for example, I got a call from a parent who was on site and said, well, I heard the police gave the all clear. How come everyone's still in the building? And if you could speak to that, maybe Mr. Crowe, I don't know who else from our side would jump in, but I think it's important for the public to understand that we work together, but there are still separate procedures for each entity to ensure safety and who's responsible sort of along those lines during an emergency.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I will tell you, if you do after-action reports on any critical incident, one of the reoccurring concerns is communication. And everybody, communications comes from a bunch of different sources, so we spend a lot of time collaboratively talking about better communications. When we have an incident that occurs at the school and we feel like communication was flawed, we try to improve that. The best way for communication to occur is, and I go back to what I spoke about earlier, is the relationship with the SRO and the administrator who's in charge of the school, which is usually the principal. In the event of a situation at the school, they should be communicating, and then we allow the schools to make the communication either to the parents or the students on what is needed to be said. Ultimately, that decision lies with the principal. Unless it's an immediate emergency and we tell them you can't do things, ultimately it's going to be the principal that's going to make those decisions and those communications.
Thank you, I appreciate that, because I think there's a...
And if I'll chime in, Ms.
Sure.
Williams, one of the things that you've heard both gentlemen talk about was an incident command structure. And so typically that's established jointly with police on scene and fire and EMS come on scene. It's a joint collaboration, which would include our staff in there. And I will tell you that Mr. Crowe and I both attended the debrief for the after action of the incident that you're referring to. And Chief Newsom is totally accurate. It always comes down to communication and then working through that to recognize where those breakdowns occurred, take away that learning. And not only do we share that with amongst the team members there, but our plan moving forward, when we've implemented this, is to share that learning across the district, kind of like a case study approach, so that our principals across the district can learn from what went well and where we needed to improve. That way, if they encounter a similar situation, they'll know how to better respond at their site.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm only picking on this incident because it's in my district, and I think it's a very recent thing for most people to be able to identify with. The last thing I'm going to ask, I think, is for Chief Newsom is what, from your perspective as a law enforcement officer, advice, because you look through it through a different lens than we do as a school division, for our school families when it comes to responding to incidences or how to best communicate with law enforcement. What advice would you impart for us?
So what I would say that our worst enemy in security generally is complacency. We talked, and Ron talked about it, I talked about it as well because of the situation in Uvalde, but the locking of the doors to ensuring that the doors, people don't get access to the doors. If you have a bad actor and that bad actor actually attends the school, they're going to be watching those things. Complacency occurs when the adults who have responsibility sees those things and they don't do anything about it because they look at it and they say, well, the kids were just getting Chick-fil-A for lunch. You know what I mean? And they downplay the significance of not having the building be secure. So that complacency is the type of thing that we're struggling all the time with our adults to say you can't be complacent about that. I'm not saying that a kid has to be punished or be suspended or anything like that, but there needs to be a conversation with the students that this can be very, very serious. If you leave those doors open, it gives somebody who's watching an opportunity to enter our schools. And once they get in the schools, and if they have bad intent, bad things are going to happen.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I understand that. As a former facility security officer, I think I spent, it felt like anyway, half of my job going, don't let the next person in, let the door lock, let them hit the buzzer. I know you know them, but it doesn't matter because someone could be coming right after them. So I do appreciate that. And it is a different lens than we look through as from a school division perspective or an average parent or
I would
school
just
board
add
member.
to that, I wish we didn't live in a world where we needed to do that, but we do.
Right.
And that's what I think that we do on a regular basis, just reminding folks. During the summertime, we spend a lot of time with risk, a lot of time with staff, trying to reemphasize that these things are real, they can happen, and we got to ensure that it doesn't happen here in Prince William County.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and turn to our school staff for Mr. Crowe and Mr. Bach. Thank you for your presentation this evening. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit, I'm just going to piggyback on that question since we're already there. From your lens, on the school division side, what recommendations would you have for our school families, students, and staff for school safety, or things that you think that are good to just generally remind our public about?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things. We have some of the staff we talked about today. We have 10 to 14 staff on the road every single day visiting schools, making sure that we're in a security posture we want to be in. And again, complacency is that. We need to have people have some patience sometimes. So when you're at the door trying to come in, understand we're going through a process to let people into the school. It may take a few minutes on occasion. And I think the other thing too is to understand when we're going through crisis communications, we can't compete with social media. So people are immediately on their phones and texting things and putting things out and wondering why we're a little bit behind that curve, because we have an obligation to work with the schools, to work with the police department, to make sure the information we're putting out is correct and accurate, and to make sure information we're putting out isn't going to undermine any information or efforts that the police have to manage that process. So just from a couple of those standpoints, I think those are important things to remember.
And Ms. Williams, I'll add, one of the things that I mentioned it in my opening comments, really parents having conversations at home and encouraging their kids, if you see something, say something. That's really important. We get a lot of tips from students that enable us to follow up and ensure safety within the building. And the other thing I always go back to is safety is never convenient. And you just heard Ron talk about that a little bit. Sometimes it's not convenient, but we do those things with purpose, and we do those things to keep our students safe. One of the things, I think it was the incident that occurred in St. Louis, we took that opportunity. There was they handled it really well. There wasn't a significant loss of life because there were locked doors in the school. Interior doors were locked. So we took that opportunity to remind our school community and our principals and teachers that it is important to keep our interior doors locked and remain in that security posture.
Thank you. Could you speak a little bit, because something I learned at Parent Title I camp, and I'm not sure that the word is really spread out there, mostly because it would be dependent on your student to come home and tell you, and depending on their age and how much they want to share, you get what you get sometimes. But I wonder if you could speak to a little bit about how we've modified our approach to be age appropriate and easily comprehensible by our students and relevant. Because as the chief was saying, you know, before we didn't have like, what is it, run, hide, fight, right? Most of us, I think, well, at least speaking from my generation, is sort of hide, right? Wait for backup, and then you just don't do anything. So we continue to modify and evolve those procedures. But I was very impressed with what I saw at the Title I family camp, and I wonder if you could speak a little bit about how we're doing that division-wide and how it's being modified.
I don't know that we're modifying. I do know that, you know, when they review, I spoke about our crisis management video. There's one that we showed to middle and high school students and staff, and there's another video that doesn't include some information that elementary school students watch. So we provide information on crisis management and response. But I really think the teachers and the staff at the school are the ones who know how to take that information and provide communicate that in an age-appropriate manner to their students. They're with them every day. They know what students in their classroom can manage and handle, so we're going to provide them information. We're going to rely on them to provide that in an age-appropriate manner.
And Ms. Williams, I think what you might be referring to is when Mr. Edwards goes out to our schools and provides training for our students, he does adapt it so that that training is age appropriate. I've been an elementary, middle, and high school principal, and there is a significant difference in how you do go about presenting that information. I will tell you that we receive overwhelmingly positive feedback from our students. Our students appreciate Mr. Edwards going out, and they express, they're very open with him when he goes out to train, and safety is first and foremost on their mind. They have concerns, and they're always very appreciative, and the comments that we get about his training are always very positive from the students. They're appreciative, and they want to have it. But yes, we do adapt that according to the level of students we're training.
Okay, I'm going to wrap this up because I know that people have to have questions. I just want to say I appreciate that because I think that marries very nicely with dealing with our students' mental health while they're learning these subjects, these trainings, and learning why security and safety is important and how to respond, and not just being put through, go to the hallway, sit down. It can be traumatizing, especially for our younger ones. And so I appreciate that's sort of what I was referencing with the modernization. The last thing that I'm going to say is I again want to thank you for being here in person. I think there's a tremendous amount of value to being able to see the people who are responsible at a high level for our safety and security. This is what you do for your job day to day for our students, how it is impactful in other areas of our student and our staff's lives on a day-to-day basis. And to you, Chief Newsom, I think that, again, there's so much value in seeing our local chief of police here in our boardroom communicating with our school families and our school community. I think that shows such a high level of respect for our school community and how well we work together to ensure the safety of our school families. So thank you very much. I appreciate all of your time.
Okay, Mr. Wilk.
Thank you all for being here, Chief Newsom, everyone. I appreciate your time. The good thing of following Ms. Williams is a lot of stuff gets answered. So I will go through and just a couple noticeable things and reiterate some points that she made. You know, that SRO deployment slide 5. I think that's very important. Mr. Crowe would know, being on the Safe Schools with me for 5 years. I think ad nauseum, I kept on saying, like, why can't we have more SROs? Why isn't this made, you know, why isn't anyone explaining this? Because, you know, citizen A, citizen B, whatever, want to know why we can't put more SROs in our school. And, you know, the perception might be that the school board doesn't want more SROs in the school. And I appreciate you detailing exactly kind of where we're at in that situation right now. And I see you guys everywhere at hiring fairs, community events, so it's not a matter of not trying to hire new officers, because I don't think there's ever been an event I've never, you know, seen your group at trying to recruit new officers. But just wanted to add that, and I appreciate, you being forward with that, because if we follow then Mr. Crowe's presentation and put everything in context, the fact that this board hired 104 FTEs to 100 and how many? I said 104. Okay, we'll say 140. 140 or 104, what? There's a difference. But anyways, so that number of FTEs just last year and those investments I think are crucial, especially adding those security specialists to the elementary schools as we phase those in and look at other precautionary measures. Just other comments, the visible uniforms. I think I heard from some security site-based people at first that they weren't extremely happy with those, but as I've seen it and the application of it, I think it's great. It gives that presence to the students, the staff, and I think from a parent or an outsider standpoint, it gives that level of assurance like, oh, these are people who are actually like in the school or specialists or people helping protect the kids. So I like that. You kind of answered slide 9 of what percentage, those 3 experts are on site versus at central office. It seems like they're at schools a lot. Yeah, the idea. Okay. Other noticeable things to add, I've gone to probably football games 75% of my Fridays this fall, and I've noticed some major differences even over the last year. The safety, security, the presence of police, just even how the students interact with them or the behaviors which have completely changed and been tempered and stuff like that. And I think, again, that's a testament to the protocols and the implementation of making sure that there's protection at these events, such as, a football game, or now we'll be hitting varsity basketball season and, those Friday night or Thursday night games. So just, a major recognition to that. Wanted to recognize that. Wanted to add with the say something thing from a back end side. So if a submission comes in, and I imagine the answer to this is, yes, but if a student says or someone puts in that, they're going to harm themselves or they're going to harm a school, like a threat, that I'm assuming there's an IP, like what is the process that goes into something like that when that type of incident occurs?
So if they come in after hours, the first thing that occurs is there's a call to the police department, to the 911 dispatch center, and we're getting people moving. The next call they make positive contact with the central office team and the school-based team to provide an immediate response. So it's literally a 24/7, 365 process, no matter when it comes in. If there's kids that need help in the middle of the night, we're up 1, 2 a.m. providing addresses to wherever they need to go to chase that information. So until we go to completion, whether it's a student in need or a threat that comes in.
Excellent. And then the last thing, I think it was briefly touched on, but when we're talking about the tragedies of Uvalde or Sandy Hook and all those events where our teachers were on the front lines and horribly sometimes the shields to protecting those children, what role has teacher feedback or collaboration gone into all these protocols and the site-based, this different procedures and stuff like that when you guys are factoring in, these security drills or what occurs in these scenarios, to make the teachers feel more comfortable with what we're trying to implement?
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult situation when you're training people to respond to the incidents that we're talking about. I think the comfort comes into making sure they're trained and well prepared. I mean, these are nationally recognized best practices that we're going through, and making sure we're aware and not be complacent, as the chief had said. Those are the major components that we try to keep in control and manage. So we do listen to the principals. We've got numbers, of additional security assistance for response to them. Our hiring processes have been changed due to input from principals at every level for some of our security staff. And so we do seek input, and we try to update and change our processes to be responsive to those.
Excellent. Thank you all for being here. And Ms. Williams, thank you for adding this to the agenda. Appreciate all of you for being here.
Ms. Wall.
I know it's really late, so I will be brief. But I just wanted to say, next to student achievement, this topic of school safety and student safety is just like right up there for me personally. And I wanted to thank you for this great information, detailed presentation, both from the chief and from our schools. And you're right, what gets measured gets done. I really like that quote. And I know as I've advocated for additional security measures at individual schools in my district that I'm aware of had issues or needed additional security coverage, those requests were well received. And then all of these security initiatives are just amazing. We've done so much, and I'm really impressed. And I also really value the partnership that we have with the police department. The SRO program is fantastic. I hear really good things from the community about how valuable the community sees that relationship and how well it's working. I only have one high school, so I can speak for the high school that I keep tabs on, so they're just really pleased. So I just wanted to thank all of you who have worked on this, your staff, police officers, everybody, for prioritizing student safety. And I know, this is one of the most important things that we do, is providing an environment where people, especially children, but our employees as well, feel safe coming and learning. And if they feel safe, they'll be able to learn and grow. So I know it's vitally important. I just wanted to thank you.
Ms. Jessie?
I too will be brief. Mr. Crowe, I want to thank you guys because, I've been here for a long time, and I want to thank you for keeping us safe. The table talks, the intruder in the building, all those things, I want to thank you. And to the chief of police, I want to thank you for bringing up what happened in Texas, because as a former principal, I sat there that day thinking, what's happening with these babies, and why is no one doing anything? And thank you. I think this helps the parents to know that there is what you call an incident command and all the back and forth people's talking. And I can relate. My first thought was, this principal should be in trouble. In fact, my principal friends called me and said, why was that door open? I don't know if the door was open or the infamous rock in the door, which you always have at schools. I just want to thank you guys for coming tonight and sharing everything with us. Thank you very much.
Ms. Jack?
I'll be brief too, because it's getting late. Just thank you, Chief Newsom, for coming tonight. I agree that SROs are valuable, and both from building relationships to security. I have a really quick question, because say someone's driving by a school and they see a door open, what would be the best steps? Because the tip line, wouldn't be what would you advise the best steps would be?
Yeah, we can respond to things we know about. If someone sees a door open, I'd, have them call school administration and report that. We're going to be responsive to that. We're going to figure out why that's the case and move forward with fixing the problem. Obviously, that should not be the case at any school that we have, and we're looking to, be hyper-focused on that to make sure that that's not the case. So if you do see those things, report it to the school or administration or my office. We'll reach out and manage that situation.
So call the school. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I'm taking a long time. I don't have anything that you need to answer right now. I just want to throw these out there in the atmosphere, and hopefully we'll pick it back up at a later time. I'd be interested on some more information on how much of the students are reporting incidences in school versus other sources, which we don't have to get into tonight because it's late. I'd also be interested in how we're using our DEI focus to deal with student safety, how we're addressing that with different particular groups, because every group has a different idea of perceived safety and, of course, culture and climate, depending on where you come from. That means something different to you as well. And then for a later date, maybe, the next time we reconvene or have this opportunity to really hear about what we should be doing or focused on for next steps for continuing to build the relationship, specifically with students and law enforcement, from where the students sit in their purview, and then also what options we may be thinking about as a division in the future. And that's it. Thank you.
Outstanding. Chief Newsom, thank you for coming this evening. We really appreciate it. I appreciate your close relationship with Dr. McDade and the work you do to keep us secure. And Ron and Mr. Bach, I thank you. Looking at security is a continuous improvement work, and it's the work that we really appreciate you all doing. And to reassure the public that we are always reassessing, always looking at our procedures, protocols, safety, and security as we see needs. So I thank you very much, and thank you for coming this evening. Okay. With that, we'll move next to 1703 prevailing wage resolution.